Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Tristan Bear here, the digital storyteller, and I'm super excited to be with you once again for another episode of Creative to Creative, a podcast that's all about me talking to creative people that I admire, I appreciate, respect, and I want to be like kind of on low key. On today's show, we'll be talking to my friend, my colleague, director extraordinaire, just like overall amazing creative, Matthew St.Cyr. And he is from Toronto, Canada. He is somebody that I just recently met, but his work speaks for itself. Let's bring on Matthew onto the show. How you doing, Matthew?
Hello.
Gotta have those cheap fake. You gotta have those cheap fake sound effects, eh? Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I love about one of the things we have in common is that we both have a background from the West Indies. So big up the West Indies. So Matthew, let's jump right into it. Who do you say, there's in scripture, there's a person that says, men say, I'm this, I'm that, but who do you say? He was talking to his friends. This is Jesus talking to his friends. He's like, who do you say I am? So I'm going to say, who do you say that you are? I mean, many people have many interpretations of who you are as a creative. Who are you? Who is Matthew?
Yeah, I'd say the simplest way to answer that is I'm an artist. I have a background in the arts. I started off as a designer and illustrator, animator, and in expressing myself through film and directing and things like that, it all just blends together as art in the simplest way. So most people know me as an artist.
That's dope. That's dope, man. Like you're even in explaining it, you're just I'm a savant artist. It's dope. It's dope. No, that's what I appreciate about you. But talk to me about being an artist and the importance of sort of, we talk about this a lot, and I just want to jump into deepness because you're a deep guy, but this idea of thinking. You said something to me the other day that really resonated with me is that, we were talking about how we kind of get where each other are coming from, but the idea of getting it and thinking as an artist. Can you kind of break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah, well, I think that it's very important to be intentional with what you do. And it's not just in this era, but in our eras past, family, things like that. Art served a purpose, creation served a purpose. And on top of that, we're always creating within context. So I think that anything that you choose to make going forward, it does impact people. It does have an effect on people. And personally, I think that, even if it comes to me sharing things on social media, I think that I always frame it up as, how would I like people to feel when they're interacting with whatever I do? If it's art that I'm creating, I'd like it to potentially be, medicine in the ice cream, as I say, which is like, you can give people things that can heal them and help them even through entertainment. So I really believe that doing things with careful thought is just critical. And it doesn't always have to be extremely deep. It's just the idea of understanding that what you do can have an effect. So it's, in illustration and art, it's down to the colors, the lines, the flow. When it comes to film, it's camera movement, it's lensing. All of these things are really, really important to think about. And they do make an impact, not just on the people that are seeing the end product, but the people involved in whatever you're creating. Sometimes it's a small crew, sometimes it's larger, but that impact does ripple out.
No, I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that every time I speak to you, I feel like I get a little bit smarter. It's a weird thing, but it's like, I love being around people that see the world in a different way, that give me a fresh perspective and challenge my own thoughts and perspectives. And I remember we had a conversation, we were talking about an idea,
Yes.
an idea around, well, I can say it doesn't matter because this will probably be posted after that idea gets ideated. But it was around George Floyd and the anniversary of George Floyd's death. I don't even know if you could call it
Mhm.
anniversary, but I had this idea about shooting something and filming it, and I wanted to kind of bounce the idea off of you. And we had a
Mhm.
really interesting conversation about black trauma, black pain,
Yes.
how to speak about it, how to approach it, and it really left me walking away with a better understanding of who you are as an artist, but also a deeper appreciation of, and respect and admiration of just your stance on certain things. I would love for you to kind of
Yes.
share that, a little bit more with the audience, that conversation, because we were really talking about, just to kind of
Mhm.
set it up a little bit more for the audience. I was talking about this idea of having different vignettes of different people, black people, kind of having a moment, almost like I wouldn't want to say a boil over moment, but just a moment where they all kind of lost their breath. You know what I mean? Because we all,
Mhm.
watching the tape or hearing about George Floyd, all kind of had a moment where it was like, man, that could have been any one of us. That could have been any black person. You know what I mean? That's the black
Mhm.
experience. And if the world can see this, the world's watching and the world sees this and does nothing, then what does that say to our people, our community?
Yeah.
And I want to express that. Didn't really know exactly how it was going to formulate, but you said some interesting stuff. So I'll let you kind of take it from there in terms of sharing.
Yeah. So the nuance was the first thing that came to mind was when individuals are like in the film itself, when people are having a moment to reflect, to think about, Floyd and the way that it affected them. I think that it can be framed up in a few different ways. So the idea of having people pausing in their day to day life to either reflect on it, that they could be impacted by it. The question I asked was, is it a commemorative thing or is it a point of pain? And I thought a lot about filmmaking and Black trauma and the idea that, these things are still going on. It's not over. And for people to sit there and have that experience of seeing this film, I question if it might take them back to a place that hurt them. Of course, things like this are made so that other people can see it and understand that this stuff does happen. But I always ask the question of how will people take this media and how will they feel about it? How will they go home about it? If they talk to people about it, what are they going to say first? How would it make them feel? So I think that there's often, well, I see it a lot in the North American Black community. There's a lot of media that does talk about the pain and the challenges and the struggle and what happens. But at the same time, there's a point when I always wonder who's the target audience because we already know it's happening, So I think at a point, it's like brooding. We're almost sitting in that energy. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's entirely constructive. I
Mm-hmm.
know that a lot of it is made for people outside that may not understand it to bring awareness. But I do think that people who would, I think in general, people who want to understand will take steps to understand and they will do that anyway. I mean, I know a lot of people who are not Black but have done the work and they sit there every day and they try to learn more about the world and not just this part of the world, but the rest of it, and to understand the balance of things and the nuance and what's happening to everybody and how to better do their part to make the world better. But I think when it comes to media, it's kind of challenging because
Mm-hmm.
there are like me personally, I don't watch Black trauma films. Like I'm not that person, and I don't intend to make them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, of course, there will be issues
Now,
like
now,
you
now,
know,
before you go further, I do want to
mhm,
jump in
yeah,
and just say, like, when we're talking about black trauma films, let's give some people examples. Like, are we talking about 12 Years a Slave? Are we talking about Amistad? Are we talking about, like, what types of films? Is it like, you know what I mean? Are they
the,
genre pieces?
mhm. The simplest way I can put it is movies where the bad guy in the film is racism. Um, Simplest way I can put it. That's it. It's like,
Okay.
who's the villain? Racism. And you're like, oh, well, yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh well, damn, that's rough. But
Yeah.
it's that thing where, of course there will be prejudice, of course there will be racism. That stuff exists, it happens. But
Hmm.
to anchor a ton of media around it, it can generally just it runs a risk of damaging our people mentally. Because if you're
See.
constantly shown images of our
Hmm.
people in pain or suffering or going through it or saying like, yeah, they're always out to get you, it's always out there, it's everywhere, it's going to happen to you, deal with it, it's just going to make people feel tense. The simplest way I
Hmm.
can put it is just tense. It brings tension. And I think
Hmm.
that there's a lot of room to show our people just doing other things. There's so many things that people can do. And just to
Hmm.
have the award-winning films be the ones about Black people running from police or Black people getting shot or Black people getting hurt. It's like, that's not, I don't know. And to me, I don't know if that's award worthy. I think that's, and I guess it's the scale because,
Hmm.
of course, these things happen, but it's the idea that those are the things that are getting championed, really. Like they're pushed up front very quickly.
Well, well, it's the whole idea, Matthew, of like, why is it that all of the greatest comedians, or at least black comedians, at some point or another, for the most part, have had to wear a dress, or were encouraged to
Yes.
wear a dress. You know what I mean? Again, and it's, again, you can wear a dress if you want to, if you feel empowered
Right.
to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
My question though is, why is it so prevalent within sort of the black entertainment, black comedic circles, whereas we look in other circles and it's not like that. But the other thing I want to kind of push back at you, because we had this conversation, it was a really great conversation, was that because you,
Mm-hmm.
two things you said which really kind of stuck out to me in that conversation. Number one, you said, who is this for, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I had not asked that question. You know what I mean? I had
Mm-hmm.
not honestly asked that question, thought about it. And then when I did respond back to it, because I am pretty good at thinking critically, in
Mm-hmm.
conversations, I said,
Yes.
and I think you remember this. I said, oftentimes when we look at the Jewish community, just for an example,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they just make movies about the Holocaust for themselves, or documentaries about the Holocaust for themselves. I
Mm-hmm.
often find that they say, lest we forget, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
Remembrance Day, lest we forget. We have all of these moments because there were moments in human history. And
Yeah.
I think that the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, was a moment in human history, because we not only saw the ripple effects throughout the whole world and how it's literally changed things on, put things upside down,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of like, or maybe right side up, in the sense of black people can actually be angry and communicate that frustration and that anger in spaces, and people can have
Mm-hmm.
made room for that. And not to say that we're all angry, but to say like, this is not right. This
Mm-hmm.
is,
Well, cool.
discrimination, whatever, right? We can be a lot more vocal, but it
Mm-hmm.
also did something to us as a people. Like we finally had unequivocal evidence, not that we didn't have before,
Right.
but it wasn't a movie. It was like, it was real life in a
Mm-hmm.
civilized, westernized society of racist ideology, behavior, and then
Mm-hmm.
action. Right. So it was,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me, it's like, I don't want to forget that moment and what
True.
that moment signifies. And then I also don't want to live in that pain, which is what I
Mm-hmm.
felt like you were saying too, is like, we can't just keep on going back to that poison pill, because it's not doing any good for our souls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that comes down to the expression of the event because
Hmm.
I think the initial idea was people pausing and taking moments because it hit them. And
Hmm.
I think that that's something that, of course, we do feel. It's very real. It does happen. It's like not over. But I think the idea is finding a proper vehicle or a method or a scenario that would allow people to experience it the right way.
Hmm.
That I guess it's the idea of something that could, if you show it to them, would it potentially have them frame it up in a negative way and impact them
Hmm.
negatively? And
Hmm.
the kind of pieces to sort out is just the idea of what way can this moment be shown, or the reflection be shown, to put the right messaging behind that event, because it's a subtle thing, because it's people going through stuff. So it's that's just something that, again, like, it just has to be worked through and solved. But yeah, it's a challenging thing. It's definitely a challenging thing. And I think that when you brought up the idea, I was like, I understand. And at the same time, I think if I took it one way, there's the odds of other people taking it the same way and feeling that type
Yeah.
of thing. But yeah, it's always interesting because it is important. There's a lot of important stories we have to tell. A lot of important stories we have to tell, and framing these things up in the right way in a historical context is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I love that, and I think that we should be able to, black people in the black community is not a monolith. We're not a monolith. We have a plethora of different expressions, ways to
Mm-hmm.
express our blackness, and I think that we should be able to have these conversations and not
Yeah.
walk away feeling like we can't work together, or
Right.
we're adamant, what I mean? Like, I think that these are conversations that help us grow and see things differently, right? Because
True.
honestly, up until having that conversation with you, I had not really looked at that side of things. You know what I mean? I looked
Mhm.
at it oftentimes when I'm ideating and I'm thinking about ideas, I'm I'm never really thinking about, and I think I shared this with you too. When I create, I'm creating ultimately for my kids. I'm creating legacy
Yeah.
pieces of historical love letters to them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
This is how I felt in these moments. This is why I had to
Yeah.
create these pieces. So I'm thinking from that perspective always. But I have to
Mhm.
realize people aren't always coming from that perspective, right? But you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
then it's like, you have to balance out all of that with the expectations of the audience versus the vision of the idea that you have as a creative,
Mhm.
right? But anyways,
Yeah.
that's like super, like I told you guys, we're going deep. We're going deep today, all right? Like
Yeah.
this is crazy. But I
Mhm.
love this. This is why I brought you on the show. Let's talk a little bit about,
Mhm.
like, you not really your upbringing, but like, you said you're an actor. Like, did you start out acting? Did you start out writing? Did you start out drawing? Like, what was this sort of fascination with art and with communication and connecting with people?
Yeah. So overall, my dad, he was an artist as well. He could draw and all of that, but he was a musician, a touring rock guitarist. He used to play with Parliament as a kid. Him and my uncle used to jam with them
Okay.
when they were really young. Um, but yeah, it's just art has been kind of normal for me growing up. My whole family were kind of just into that stuff. In terms of movies and even animation and stuff, I was introduced to that pretty early, and then I just always been involved in it. Yeah, movies and art and music have just been super normal at home. And yeah, I grew up, and then I started writing. And with writing, then I thought, okay, I'd like to communicate these stories a little better. So I started drawing more, and then went to animation school because I figured that if I wanted to get good, I'd just go to a place with the most intense drawing program in the region. I happened to be fortunate that the top school in the country for it was like in the general Toronto area.
What,
So
Sheridan?
because of that, and yeah,
Yeah.
so because of that, we ended up, yeah. So with that, had a lot of great students from all over the place came through. Professors were all ex Disney people. Just learned a ton from everybody. So that kind of helped. And that was essentially film school as well. So we did study films
Yeah.
in animation school, of course, but combining that with having to do films manually, afterwards, I picked up a camera and it was pretty much easy because I'd been drawing it out by hand for so long that it was
hmm
just, it just makes sense. I think anybody who's in the animation industry would pretty much do very well with the camera. Yeah, it's a pretty easy translation. Hmm. Yeah, so
That's good. That's good. That's good.
yeah, that's pretty much how I got to this point. I mean, I moved to Japan for a little while. After college, my dad
Why?
passed.
Could you explain that?
So it's a combo thing. So I
Okay.
initially wanted to go for a while, but my dad passed when I finished school, and we talked before that, and he was like, is there like I asked him, is there anything that I need to know? And he was like, yeah, like your objectives, you have to follow those completely. Don't let anything stop you. Don't let this stop you. The situation is passing. He's like, don't let anything stop you. It's like you have to go for what you want, and just do it, just live it. And I was like, all right, that's I'm gonna do it. So um, I stacked up some work, and then I went over there for a while. And at the time, I didn't feel like drawing anymore, clearly, because been through a bit. And then
Yeah.
I just had a camera with me, and one of my other friends was living out there, and we just ran around Osaka, Japan, with cameras, and we're just living, shooting, enjoying it. And I started meeting some friends out there, and my friend Liz, she patched me into a DJ that was traveling through the country from New York. And with that, I went on tour, and I started shooting photos and video and just doing it as work. And I was like, what, I can get paid to run around Japan and party and meet people and make friends. I'm like, okay, I'll do this. I can get used to this, you know? And from that, I came back to Canada, and I was like, yeah, I want to keep doing this. And then some of my friends who were illustrators, um, they were in also from Sheridan back in the day. They hit me up because they were shooting some music videos and short films, and they just called me up to be a cinematographer. And from that, I was just running. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what many people don't understand is that there really isn't a linear path to this.
Right.
And, if
Yeah.
you're looking for, an A, B, C, D solution, it's not, especially within the space and the realm of storytelling and film and the arts. It's
Mm-hmm.
so non-linear. You actually need that space to think, to grow, to see things a little bit differently, because there's
Mm-hmm.
the skill aspect of things, but then there's the actual perspective that you bring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because anybody can be a
Yeah.
great drawer, or anybody can be a great artist or a great cinematographer, but what perspective are you bringing behind the lens, behind the camera? How are
Right. Right.
you, what are you seeing, right? I always say to
Mm-hmm.
people, create what you see, right? I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
see what Scorsese sees or what Matthew sees or whatever else. I want to see
Mm-hmm.
what you see,
Yeah.
because that's your perspective, and that's the gift that will make you unique and stand out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You know?
Precisely.
So
Precisely.
yeah. Sorry, did you want to add to that or something? Or sorry.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, it's all about your fingerprint. I mean, when we look at um, somebody through a lens, we're not just, our lens selection, our angle, everything comes down to your vision, right? You're going to have ideas behind the images that you take. You're going to have certain preferences that are shaped through all of your experience up until that point. So your decision making is really, that's the key point. Like, there's the technical aspect, and then there is your mind. And most of this game is mental. With drawing, most of it is the mind. So for example, you can become better at drawing without physically drawing. You just need to learn how to think differently. And if you're understanding things, for example, if you understand anatomy, the origin and insertion points for muscles, the skeletal system, the range of motion, things like that, when you go to draw a person, you're going to have an easier time. You're just going to understand stuff a little bit better. If you understand how color and light work, then when you go to paint, you just make better decisions, right? You all have the same paint. Like, it's all available. It's just your ability to understand things and then choose differently and to have reasons behind your decisions will get you much farther. And then in that sense, you'll just become articulate. The point of anything is, like, there's a technical training, which is just to get it in your system. And then there's that understanding, which kind of like roots it and gives it better links. So you can recall information better, you can connect it better, you can even guess better at a point because you'll have
Mm,
that in your system. And then after that, when you're just on a pure technical level, articulate, then you can just choose and say, I'd like to make it feel like this. And you can go by feeling at that point because it's unconscious competence.
Matthew, how important is it as an artist to, as a storyteller, as a person, a creative, to
Mm-hmm.
expedite choice, to
Mm-hmm.
to show choice, to choose choice? You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
talk about, you use these words that are very intentional, like choice and feeling and
Mm-hmm.
thinking. Why is that so important? Why is choice so important as creative?
Mm, I think in my experience, I've just seen a lot. I've seen a ton of art. My high school art teacher was really, really kind, mean, but kind in the sense that she made us study art history and memorize thousands of paintings. We had the same teacher for all 4 years, and she just had us
Oh wow.
memorize thousands and thousands of paintings and understand it and understand the eras and why people made the decisions and where stuff came from. And in seeing a ton of it, it's like it gets to a point where it's like Google, where
Mm,
it's just there and you could find anything you want pretty much. But your ability to choose the right words, the right combinations will get you the information that you need. You need to understand why things are happening so that you can effectively select. It's like another analogy is like, you're given a wardrobe with 10,000 pieces of clothing. That does not mean that you will have good style. That just, there's no guarantee. It's just there. It's stuff. And your ability to cultivate your own taste and then choose gives you your flavor, right? It represents you, but it represents anything that you choose, right? But you have to know, I guess you have to know yourself first. Even if it's just you have to be aware of that intuition, that feeling, because we have a lot of data that's just, behind our eyes. It's just there at a level that we don't always realize. It's a thing where, we get a gut feeling. That gut feeling is informed, right? But we may not consciously be aware of what informs that decision. But the idea is first to just understand that it exists. You go to that gut feeling, you understand everybody has their own taste, you trust that, and then you stack more data and you can better inform that decision. So choice is a powerful thing because it gives you the ability to better navigate this world, but it also allows you to better align by choice, right? So for example, if you were saying, I'd like to position myself at this point in the industry, right? Your ability to understand things gives you a sense of how you can fit in or match it or surpass something. But you have to be aware of these thought processes. You have to be conscious and analytical. And at the same time, all of those things like become condensed and then they link with just feeling. And at a point, then it goes behind your eyes and you can just feel your way through. It's a very roundabout way to say it, but it's just that idea between, I just see it as like data and action. That's kind of how I think about it. We collect as much
Data and
data as
action.
possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you collect as much data as possible and you've seen things. You can see where all of your favorite stuff comes from. You can tell their influences. You can understand, you can probably guess what they study. You might even be able to guess what music they listen to, depending on what art they like. Um, and in knowing these things, you can um, you can just snap and fit a certain thing. Like you can say, it's like say you want to draw a circle, but you don't have the mechanical ability to effectively draw a smooth circle. Once you practice and get that in your mind, then you can do it without looking, right? And that's what a lot of this stuff is. That display is a secondary part. The collection is the first part. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I like those analogies a lot. So,
Mhm.
man, like there's so much I want to ask you about. Like, so I guess my question is, where do you get your inspiration from? Just if you could explain to us, like you know, where you get your influences from, or what inspires you. Because I know from my
Mhm.
personal experience, when I'm shooting anything, filming anything, editing anything, coloring anything, there are things that inspire me,
Mhm.
engender a level of creativity, a level of passion, versus just, all the content that we just see online, right? But there's certain
Mhm.
brands, there's certain stories. Sometimes when I'm getting ready to shoot another film or a piece, I'll pop in a specific movie that I just love watching to kind of get my creative juices going, and I'll always find something new in it. Are there any sort of pieces like that for you as an artist, or where do you find your inspiration from?
Hmm. I'd say that it's a compound thing. I think it depends on what task I'm trying to do because,
Mm-hmm.
for example, when I'm drawing, I have old playlists that I listen to that are like um, tons of old music. I've kept every bit of music anybody's ever given me. So I have tons and tons of songs from just, you know, years past. And that kind of puts me in a certain zone. If I need to get in the creative space of that era, I can just kind of get there. But I think nowadays, I find that I'm actually at a point where I'm turning off everything for to just like tap in. It's a very, it's a different thing. It's like there will be no music, you know, no mood board, nothing else, just um, time and space. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that now I'm just kind of getting to that zone where I've already seen a lot. And I think that I need to, move forward and keep trusting myself to better dig in and to find things because, um, especially with the rise of social media, things like Instagram, it's very easy to have information pouring all the time. There's just tons of stuff coming in. And it's very, very important to me to just release that, to not be too connected, to not be too influenced, to just actually think about, what I care about, what I think is cool. Um, and even like pulling from dreams and things like that, just experiences in real life, experiences in dreams, combining those things and making art based on that is far more important to me lately. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm really pulling from just actual raw life itself,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to specific media sources, because I'm at a point now where technically I can break stuff down and understand why they did it and how they did it. But I think it's more important going forward for me to just carve out my own space in the world and say, this is my voice, this is my thing, and this is my own blend. And I like it because I've grown into it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just recently made a few purchases for some new tools, and one of
Mm-hmm.
the things I was sharing with you is just the fact that it's just making me, or giving me the freedom to just get up and just film.
Yeah.
I'm finding inspiration in every single sunset, every sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about just shooting, just finding things to shoot,
Yeah.
without needing it to go on the gram, without it needing to be tweeted 10,000 times, without it needing to go viral on YouTube. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
create, and there's a purity, there's an innocence, there is a freedom in that, and I actually connect a lot with that, the whole idea of kind of not disassociating but disconnecting from all the information. I almost feel like I'm at, like, back in the day, we used to like all go, well, at least for me and my family members, we used to always go to like Mandarin. Like Mandarin was like the first original buffet, okay, in all of Canada, at
Mm-hmm.
least from what I remember.
The big
You
one.
go
It's
to
the big one.
Mandarin, exactly. That was the big one, right? You go to Mandarin, you're trying to count your plates, right? I got eight
Mm-hmm.
plates. This man got five plates. Oh man, you only did two plates. But like, there was always a point when in that Mandarin experience where everything tastes the same: greasy, fatty, salty, and sweet. And at a certain
Mm-hmm.
point, you look at the food and you're just disgusted. You're like, ugh. If
Mm-hmm.
I
Too much.
have another whiff of that food, I'm just gonna vomit. And I think that's how I feel
Yeah.
about social media now. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's great for what it is, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
almost at a point where every time I open up the app or the apps, it just becomes disgusting to me. Like, it's just like I'm
Yeah,
over it,
it's peak saturation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Peak saturation. That's the best way to put it. And it's just like, and I'll be full transparency because, we keep it 100 here, right?
Mhm.
You know, from a mental health standpoint, from a comparison standpoint, from a, even
Mhm.
if you are content with your life, the more you're on social, specifically Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, or whatever else, the more it pacifies you in one way in terms of not actually going out and creating content yourself. But then on another end,
Mhm.
it also makes you dissatisfied because you don't even know. It starts drawing from you
Mhm.
the contentment and the gratefulness that you
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
because you're looking at what the next man has, the next camera, the next lens, the next experience or opportunity, and you cannot possibly be productive creatively if you're spending so much energy consuming and digesting and thinking about how that guy or that girl, that person has these opportunities or are so successful.
Mhm.
So I don't know how you feel about
Yeah.
that, but that's sort of part of my reasoning as well. Is like I know myself. I
Mhm.
know I'm only human. There's only so much I can take, and there's only so much I can
Mhm.
handle before I start feeling like my life really sucks.
Mm. It's one of those things. It's challenging. I think what I started doing was just I literally just started talking to people, talking to the industry pros, like reaching out to people, getting to know their sense of scale, what's going on, learning about the inside of stuff. And um, it's a show. It's all a show. There's always a show going on. And the thing about like in film, everybody's trying to get to the next level. Everybody's trying to go farther. And I think that at a point I was like, yeah, it's just out of touch. It's not. This is not why I started doing it. Like the reason, like when it comes to me making my stuff, personally, I told a friend this the other day. I was saying my stuff is already complete the second that it exists. Like I'm very much that type of person. When it came to me drawing back in the day, um, the fact that I'm drawing a picture, I just draw the picture because I want to draw it. As a little kid, I'd take pieces of paper, staple them together, draw pictures on top, and write stories, and just make these books because I wanted to. I got new markers. I was like, these are cool. I want to use the markers. It's complete. It's like I don't need to show anybody for it to be real. I'm happy to create it. And for me it's that I'm really at that point where it's like I like for a bucket list type of thing, it's like I have a set type like movies that I want to make. I have stories that I want to make. I have things I want to exist in the world. And it's just to make them exist. Like I don't need fanfare. I don't need applause. I don't need a ton of people being like, this is the best thing ever. For me, it's just like I just want to do it. And
Mm,
that's really what drives me. And I think that social media, it's interesting because you can kind of see other perspectives. You can see different countries across time where people have been taking photos since the 70s. You can see
mm-hmm.
things like that and just understand different ways of living and different countries and stuff you may not normally get to see. And that's always cool. And then at a point, you just have to dial it all back and just exist. Like even with same way you're getting some upgrades, right? Like the things I'm getting are lens combination things and setups because I just want to make pieces that I want to put up in my house. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's stuff that I just want to make and I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if I could do this and adjust it and tweak this post process and whatever, just to make it exist. Um,
Mm-hmm.
sure, I'd like give some of them as gifts to people or eventually sell some stuff, but it's just the idea that I really just like making stuff like at a fundamental level. And I think
Mm-hmm.
social media is like this other playground that it's useful because you can just reach out to anybody and you'd
Yeah.
actually be surprised at who it's on. The
Yep.
people that are the deepest in the film industry typically have like 1,500 or under followers. Like it's really weird. But it's cool because you can just say, hey, what's up? Where'd you get this? And they go, okay, or check this out. And they help you out. Or some people have actually just called me. They just video called me. They're like, I'm like, hey, I have a question about this. And they go, hold on. And they just call me. And I have a full conversation with
Yeah.
people that are up in the industry that I'd never met before, but they're just open because they're people. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
it's just for one, it's all people. Everybody's doing their thing. And I think of the reasons why people post, the reasons why people share. Sometimes it's business, sometimes it's people wanting validation. Other times it's just a place to hold stuff, like a portfolio or a location where you can just put stuff online and hold it. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's a memory book with archives. Um, but yeah, I think personally, I really just like making stuff. And it's kind of why social media is like a funny place. Like I share jokes there.
Yeah.
Some art sometimes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's kind of how I cope. I don't really compare that much. I go, oh, I want to try that. That looks cool. Um, but it's just understanding. I think the way I see it is that understanding that cool stuff is out there is dope. Because once you understand it's possible, you can actually go out and get it. You can try it. Um, but beyond that, it's just kind of it's like a side thing for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just kind of how I've started to really treat it because it can it can rob you of years. It can rob you of years of your life if you don't,
Yeah.
if you don't pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
Hmm.
love that. I love that. I love that. I wanted to circle back,
Hmm.
if you're okay with it, if you're comfortable with it,
Yeah.
and talk a little bit about your father's passing,
Hmm.
and how that
Yeah.
you did kind of mention a little bit about the advice that he gave you, but how has that really informed your personhood, who you are today,
Hmm.
and also
Hmm.
how you communicate your art, because I think that for me, my father's still in my life. He's still married to my mom. Like I talked to him, like I literally
Hmm.
got a text from him this morning, and like
Hmm.
it's weird. This may sound a little grim or glib or whatever. I don't even know how to say it, but
Hmm.
at least once a day I think about that day that I'm going to get a call and he's gone, and what I'm going to think,
Right.
feel, what I'm going to say. What
Mm.
are going to be those moments that I totally remember. So I'm asking you because
Hmm.
I'm honestly
You're
inquiring,
thinking about it.
just about how yeah, what I mean, just what your thoughts are, and how that has shaped you.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that it's I was talking to my cousin about this. I have a cousin, she's the same age as me. And we're sitting down in the hospital after my dad passed, sitting beside each other, clouds break, you know, light coming in. And we're we turned to each other and my thought was like, you know, I'm no longer scared of anything. Simplest way to put it.
Mm,
Nothing is scary. Like at that point. I mean,
mm,
like I'm not gonna do wild stuff, like I'm not gonna go crazy, but um, it's just the idea that there's I just understand how valuable life is. And I was like, yeah, I
mm-hmm,
just want to really live it. So
mm-hmm,
because of that, it's augmented the way that I even scale the work that I do. So the for example, I used to work in VFX, right? And
mm-hmm,
in that side of the industry, and animation and art and CG and all of that, there are lots of things where it's heavy work, long hours, and you're just in and just rolling and rolling and rolling. And even back then, I had a point where I was like, this doesn't make sense by scale. And I was like, there has to be more efficient. I was like, there has to be more efficient ways to go about this whole thing. So I was like, and I was just like, this is crazy because I just
yeah,
started thinking, I'm like, okay, years, right? How many years do we have here?
yep,
How many years of energetic, active time do we have here? It's not just years of our lives. It's like, how many
yeah,
years are you mobile and agile and everything? So take that into account. Then I was like, okay, my father was sick for a while before he passed. I was like, okay, I understand. In old age or ill health, stuff can change very quickly. So I was like, okay, um, is there a way that I could be more efficient? I know that I want to enjoy my life to the maximum, right? And I want to be efficient with what I'm doing. If I'm doing work for people, I'd love it to be optimized. And then that's it. Like, you know, paid really well for effective work that does not, take away too many years of my life. And
mm-hmm,
if I'm doing something that I want to devote years to, it's going to be a process of growth as opposed to just labor. Um, so those are kind of the things that I started framing. And it's the idea of, working as a contractor. I mean, I've briefly talked about it before, but it's the idea that, you know, if you can be effective working for people over a weekend, and you could scale the amount that people would be making in a month, or you might be making in a month at a normal studio, you start to ask
Mm-hmm.
yourself a question. Okay, is there a way that I can go more in this direction? I look at agencies when they have, people working for them, and they'd say they can learn larger contracts. People can work at a different scale. Their pacing is a little different. Those things are really interesting to me because I'm just, my main focus is like lifestyle first, right? I understand. I'm like, I'd like to live this way first. This is the
Mm-hmm.
priority. How do I build or like access things in a way that allows me to do that? Because that's,
Mm-hmm.
and with my dad passing and just in general, just life itself, understanding that there's a point when I'm like, I don't want to waste any time. If I have to, like, the weirdest way to say it, it's like, if I have to work to get money to do things, sure, fine. But it's like, I want to be really efficient about it
Yep.
because it's just, that's we're on the clock. Simplest way to put it, we're on the clock and we don't get time back. So that's how I see everything now. I really look at it like lifestyle first, improving my mindset, connecting with people who are on point and really care about life, that people that respect themselves and respect each other. Um, and all of this just has kind of bundled together into a gradually more optimal life flow. So yeah.
No, I love that. I love that, and I love the fact that where we kind of relate on a level is like both of our fathers were very uh, influential in terms of the way that we
Mm-hmm.
live our lives. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
me being having two kids and making the
Mm-hmm.
decision to go full time. Almost 6 years ago now, it would be in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
full time into my business. I grew up seeing my father 20 years, 30 years as an entrepreneur. Like he had his side
Mm-hmm.
hustle and he was working full time at the 9 to 5 corporate job. And then he jumped and took his side hustle to like full time work. And that
Cool.
always inspired me to be like, okay, this can work. You know what I mean? I've seen a
Mm-hmm.
black man, a father, my father, pay bills, take care of his family, vacation, have fun,
Mm-hmm.
do
Yeah.
all those sort of things and not have
Yeah.
and be his own boss, you know what I mean? And not have to answer to anybody else, right? I mean, obviously you answer to your clients, but
Right.
you get what I'm saying, right?
But
So
it's different.
I
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you have a decision though. Like that there's something about having a decision. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of I go back to that whole idea of, and I've said this before, but I really do mean it, the whole idea of with great power comes great responsibility, right? That whole
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man quote, right? Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
It really is true. Like as much as, you get to a certain point, you still there's still levels to this, and there's still levels to
Mm-hmm.
being better as an artist, as a creative, as a storyteller, but
Mm-hmm.
then also as a business person, what I mean, in your
Yeah.
taxes and in your relationship with your kids and
Mm-hmm.
your family, right? So
Yeah.
it's a lot, you know what I mean? But that being
Mm-hmm.
said, it leads me to like another question I had for you, and that is like, if you like when you're thinking about some of the different areas, resources that you use in terms of informing yourself, right? What are some of the books
Mm-hmm.
and some of the, yeah, specifically the books that interest you, that percolate with
Mm-hmm.
you, that you reference a lot? Because I think, again, going back to the idea of being a thinker as a creative, thought
Right.
means that you have to put things into your brain in order for it to percolate, and then for ideas to really come forth out of it with clarity. But if you're not
Mm-hmm.
putting in the right things, or the things that will foster that growth creatively and that creative voice, then it becomes challenging. So I mean, I know for
Right.
myself, there's different books I'll refer to a little bit later, but I'd love to know some of the books that really
Mm-hmm.
resonate with you and that you continue to read and get information from.
Yeah. So most recent, I'd say The Win Without Pitching Manifesto.
Okay.
It's a very good book recommended by the YouTube channel The Future, Christo. Um,
Yeah.
what else? Books that have been pivotal. Mastery by Robert Greene was a huge one. It was one that outlined the entire process of what we're essentially going through. Um, Everything from finding the spark to, finding mentors to orchestrating our stuff, the challenge, and then, you know, going forward from there. Um, hmm, trying to think of what else. The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. That was a very good one. Um, Tribe of Mentors, also by Tim Ferriss, but it's just tons of people suggesting really great advice. Basically, what I do is I look at people who have been where I am and are doing what I aim to do, and
Mm-hmm.
then I read up on them, and then I find out what books they read, and then a lot of these books happen to cross over among these people. But for example, when it came to writing, screenwriting, things like that, Will Smith had a video, and he listed, I think, 12 books about
Yeah.
filmmaking because he recommended them to his brother-in-law. So I just went on, I think, Book Depository and like thrift books because they're old and out of print, and I like all over, and I found them, so I just ordered them all and just read them all. And then as you start reading more of these books, you find that they start referencing each other. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of how you know the knowledge base is kind of solidifying when all of the books you're reading from a bunch of different people in different areas, like self-development, business, things like that, they all start to cross over. What else? There's a book called Marketing Fine Art Photography. That is a very, 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 very helpful book. Just for
The
scale.
man, the man said
For
very like
scale.
4 times, y'all. Check that out. Check that book out
Yeah,
immediately.
dude. It's the scale. I think it's the biggest thing is that scale. Like when it comes to working with people, when it comes to clients, at the beginning, there's a lot of times where people are just charging the wrong amounts for what they
Yes,
do. And I think that
absolutely.
understanding that there's different ways that you can sell what you do. There's different pricing models. There's whole other structures around it. There's experience building around things that you're putting out, and those things start to really augment how you get paid. I think, yeah, it's just I reached a point where with working with some friends and talking about this stuff is like I just wanted to one make different amounts of money. I just started understanding. I was like, that's become a gradually more important thing. For the past, like, when I was maybe a teenager going through college, I didn't actually care about money that much. It was the idea of I need to just understand what I'm trying to do and gain skills. And when you have skills, you can always trade at value. Like the biggest thing is you get the information, you understand your bearing, you work on yourself, right? And then you make connections, understand people, and then you trade.
Mm,
And when you have skills, you can trade and you will always get paid according to the skills that you deliver to the world.
mm,
So if you give value to the world, if you make something extremely important to the planet, you will get compensated accordingly. And it does not
mm,
matter. Inflation and all of the other things don't matter because it's just important and people will compensate you properly. But you have to, of course, do the groundwork first to get there. So all of the books that I've been reading are just pieces of the framework that kind of have connected the dots and made things easier that way. So 4 Hour Work Week, for example, is just things like time optimization, sequencing, asking the right questions. Win Without Pitching is another one of those things where it's like, when you're working with clients, the ability to properly diagnose them and prescribe them the right thing, to position yourself correctly in terms of your image and your pricing. Yeah, it's just a bunch of different things. They add up. They all add up. And then mastery is one of those things that just showed me the whole flow. So that around the age of maybe 22, I understood the journey that I'd been on so far and where I was going over the next 10 years. And from that, I was able to be very calm as I was going forward with everything because I understood that it's a very gradual process. And the assembly just takes place over time. But with those few pieces, it became a roadmap. And from there, I was just, it's just piece by piece, day by day. You start
mm.
getting everything in line and lots of lists, lots of checklists. Definitely. Oh, one other thing, the bullet journal. People need to go and learn about the structure of the bullet journal. You can basically go on the website, learn how to make it, take a notebook, and you structure your stuff in a way that will better optimize and sort out your calendar. It's a very manual way, so it sticks to your memory a bit more. but it's also just very efficient and clean. Yeah, that's the other recommendation.
Listen, if y'all are not making notes, please pause the podcast, rewind it, do whatever you got to do. Listen, that was like a whole lot of stuff. You see what I'm saying? This is what happens. This is the type of conversation I have with Matthew. I ask him one thing, and he gives me like a whole big, massive dump of information, which is great because it makes you feel super hella dumb, but in a good way. Like, okay, cool. Like, you're like, okay, cool. I got some work to do. I gotta read some stuff. For me, one of the most recent books that I really loved was called Finish It. By John
I heard
Aker.
about that.
And yeah, that one's really dope. And it's super practical. And the thing I love about his reading is it's easy reading. It's not super overcomplicated, but it really keeps you accountable, and it gives you practical ways to look at yourself, right? Because I think oftentimes as artists, especially when we're dealing with, we come through this sort of like inception ideation stage, right, Matthew? And we're like, oh man, we're so excited about something. Then we're getting the team together. Then we do maybe if we're lucky, we get to the planning, writing stage is sort of pre-production. And then if we get to the place where we're actually doing production, let's not even get to production point. Most of our experiences with great artists is that they stop at the ideation place. They may reach out to people, bounce ideas off of people, and then you'll never hear about it again. And if they get to pre-production, it's like, that's great, but then they're like, oh, I don't have money, I don't have this. And the whole idea behind this book, I don't want to give away too much, is that, the greatest enemy of completing is perfection. It's not procrastination. It's not all this other stuff. It's perfectionism. Because if you think about it, if we're all, trying to be perfect, we'll never get anything done. But if you just focus on getting it done to the best of your ability at the point that you're at with the budget that you have, then you'll get it done. The goal is not to get it perfect, it's to get it done. And as perfect as possible, obviously. And I think that oftentimes we overthink. I mean, we have been talking about thinking, but sometimes as artists, we overthink the process instead of just get the hell out there, pick up a camera, make your choices, be definitive or decisive, and create something.
Yeah. And I think the easiest way to look at it is rapid prototyping. Just be comfortable with that process of just, if you want it to be perfect, cool, it will get there. But you have to let yourself do the thing over and over and over again for it to be at that level. Like, just, as you said, just do it. You have to get out there.
And to be honest with you, like, I mean, let's actually, if we actually think about it, like, let's just take the genre of film. Can we think of, more than 4 films or more than 3 films that we believe, in our opinion, is a perfect film or are perfect films? Like the idea of trying to shoot and write and direct a perfect film is just, to me, it's kind of insane, right?
Right.
I think
There are some,
only 2. Sorry, go ahead. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, there are some pretty airtight films, but at the same time, it's all perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I could feel this film is perfect, and then you go watch it and you'd be like, no, it's trash. And I'd be like, this is your taste.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this. These are 2 of my top films. There are some other ones, but the ones that kind of stick out to me right away when I think of my favorite films, and I can watch them any time of day, any season, is number 1 is 12 Angry Men, which is like shot in like the 1930s, 1940s. Not 1930s, but like 1950s. Yeah, amazing movie. I don't understand why they haven't remade it, although they shouldn't remake it because they'll probably ruin it because they'll try and do too much with it. And it's one of the best well-made films. There's only 2 sets in the whole film.
I haven't. I was about to watch it. I haven't actually seen it, but I know what it's about. I know the whole structure.
You have to watch it. You have to watch it. You'll have so much appreciation for it, but then also it's so relevant to today. To today's standards, it's still relevant. Obviously it's a different time, so the lingo's different, but every moment I love it of it.
Mm,
And then the other perfect film,
of
and this
course.
is just my own opinion, is Shawshank Redemption. I mean, that is to
Mhm,
me is a perfect film. It's a investment of your time because you gotta be willing to sit down and watch
mhm,
a real hard hitting, deep, funny, inspired movie. But it's like, it's like a Lord of the
mhm,
Rings movie, but made in prison. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? In the
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1940s, right? So it's
Bro,
an epic, and I love it. I love it. What about you?
that's cool. That's really cool. Movies I could watch any day. Um, the French movie Emily. I could watch
Okay.
that one any day. Um, it's just it's like it has a bunch of different styles in it. It's very easy. It's like you feel good at the end of it. It's just a happy movie. Um, but I think that's part of why I can just watch it. And I actually like I watched it before and at home, and then I got a chance to see it at the TIFF screen with the film print, and I was like, oh, this is a like it is amazing. Like, it just looks better. So I'm kind of on that zone where it's like movies that I've seen before. I think experiencing them in a certain way um,
Hmm.
kind of brings them into that. Oh, now it's perfect. I get it.
Hmm.
Um, there was one I remember. I watched Fifth Element. I watched Fifth Element at the Cinesphere, and I was like, "This movie is goofy. It's ridiculous." And then I watched it in like IMAX, and I was like, "Oh, this is this is what it's supposed to like." The pacing, the direction.
Hmm.
I understood like the close-ups felt different when you're seeing them at that scale. It's like they
Hmm.
chose the shots for a specific reason, and I think that when it comes to movies, it's really around the experience that people, like the creators, designed it around. Like they
Hmm.
expect you to watch it in a theater. At that time, they probably didn't expect you to watch it at home and to feel the scale. Like the odds
Hmm.
of, I don't know when that movie came out, but like, the odds of people having that scale at your house is not a thing. So
Hmm.
it's designed around the movie theater.
Hmm.
It was also like when I remember catching Interstellar in theater as well.
Yeah. Wow.
And it
Yeah.
was the sound in that movie, the way that everything was handled was, I was like, oh, this is the room you're supposed to experience the same, because if you watch it outside of here, it could be interesting, it could be cool, but you're supposed to feel the movie differently
Mm.
here. And
Hmm.
I think that's just an interesting idea of, I really wish there were, I mean, like, of course, global pandemic and stuff, but I wish there were more openings for us to just be in theaters. Like the theater local
Yeah.
to me, I remember even last summer, they were screening things like Jurassic Park, like, and
Oh,
all of that stuff, like in theaters here. And I'm like,
I
man,
haven't. By
we're
the way,
we're we're too young.
side note, I have
Mhm.
not. I haven't seen Jurassic Park. So I saw it when I was a kid in the theaters. I haven't seen it.
Right?
That's like 25 years ago. I haven't seen it in the theaters at all on the
Yeah,
big screen in 25 years. I would love to see. That's one of my favorite movies of all time, Jurassic Park.
yeah. It's a beautiful movie, and I think yeah, catching it in theater is one of those things where it's like I like that's what I was saying. I wish a lot of the movies from when we were kids could be screened in those locations because we understand them better. We can appreciate them a lot
Hmm.
better. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, this is such an interesting conversation. I want to ask you, two more questions and then we'll wrap up. But the first one is like, what are some of the projects that you can share that are exciting, that are up and coming, that we should look out for?
Mm. So I've been developing an animated film. I've been working on it for a while. Just been chipping away at this. So it's based in island horror. Like I don't know if there are many of those films at all, but we have a lot of folklore in the islands. We have our own creatures. We have our own stories, and I think that telling that stuff would be really interesting. So I have one animated thing that I've been chipping at, and then a live action one that I'm shooting at home that I've been working on gradually. Um, yeah, it's just the zone that I like. I find that I have a good sense for horror. Like when I was younger, I didn't really watch those movies, but as I got older, I started to understand how to craft them properly.
Let's be
And
let's be let's be honest,
what I,
Matthew.
Mhm.
Black people don't watch horror before. black
Oh man,
Black people from the
yo,
West Indies
my
are like, that stuff is real.
the, man, and that's the thing. Like my dad was all about it because he was. Again, we have thousands of movies at our house, like VHS everywhere.
Yeah.
Like back when like tons and tons of movie of catalogs. Like he made typed out catalogs of our movies, and through that, I was exposed to all kinds of different types of movies. Horror, comedy, action, everything. But I find that because of that, I think I understand a lot of the underlying mechanics. Kind of, it feels like intuitive, but it's just information that I've taken in over time.
Mm,
But yeah, I think that horror is something that I want to approach. Psychological thriller, even blending in comedy aspects and things like that. But it's the idea that there's a lot of culture to pull from. My family being from Trinidad, there's there's a ton of culture, there's a ton of history in the islands, and I want to integrate that into what I do. Yeah.
mm. No, that's dope. And lastly, we talked so much about all these ways that we can become better as creatives. Matthew,
Mhm.
could you speak to the young creative coming up on the come up that wants to learn and create and wants to be like you? I want to be like Matthew. Um, what advice would you give to them? I mean, like, what sensibilities would you want to translate to them?
Okay. Two things. It's advice that was given to me or that I picked up along the way. Um, find out what you think is the coolest stuff in the world. Like, absolutely have to find out what you think is the coolest, not what other people think is the coolest. Your stuff. Like, in my instance, when I was in high school, it was me and my friends, and they were giving me a ton of like underground Japanese rock music and like electronic and chip tunes and stuff, and like visual rock, where like we have metal bands dressed like vampires and stuff. Like, it was cool, but it was
I'm not
like
laughing at you, but
cinematic music.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's just so different. Yeah, exactly.
it's so ridiculous. Like it's so different.
It's
And I'm like, wow.
it, it, it's super distinct. Like I remember, quick side note, there's this one band called No God, and they're
Okay.
wild. They have a super long name, but like the short version is No God. And in the first video they ever made, they're traveling around the world looking for the Dragon Balls. And they're basically it's this insane video. And a few years ago, I actually got the chance to reunite with my college friends, and we saw them live in Toronto. It was crazy. They're amazing live. But it was that thing of like just the wildest influences, the wildest. I guess it's just free thinking, right? All of those bands are
Yeah.
kind of out there, and they made their own style. And I think that's an important thing. So with anybody coming up, anybody, not just coming up in anybody, anywhere, it's just you have to know what you think is cool. Regardless if anybody around you thinks it's cool or they say anything about it, it doesn't matter. Know that it's cool to you and stick to it. Let yourself dive into that. It
Mhm.
will charge you up, and you will be charged when doing the work. And the second part is be willing to really study. So there is the creative, loose, freeform aspect that's your intuition and all the stuff you enjoy. And then there's a raw technical foundation to all of this stuff.
Mhm.
Understand that anybody can come up with good ideas, but the execution is something that people have to craft. You have to understand it.
Mhm.
You have to really work for it. And initially, you won't always have a team of people around you to help you do it. So that's also part of what led me to become proficient in a few different areas, is
Mhm.
because in general, when I was coming up, I told people what I liked and I wanted people to join in, and they'd either talk crap or just not join in or not want to help or whatever. And I had to be
Mhm.
okay with that. I was like, all right, they don't understand it. It's cool. I just know that I want to do this thing, and I kept doing it. And eventually I just get good at the stuff that I do. Right. So I'd say that first, it's understand what you really, really love more than anything else, what you enjoy, what makes you happy, what charges you up. And then understand the technical foundation, understand the dynamics of people and business and the craft. Those things will all kind of intertwine to become a solid foundation and a means by which you can express that idea and that creativity and that taste. So I'd say that's the most important consolidated information because that's, again, what everybody that I know that's been successful has lived by. They figured that out. And I think that on the way for me, like, I'm not there yet, but I'm on my way. And I think that in the wins that I've had so far, it's been because of that combination of just understanding my own taste completely and using the technical backing to properly be articulate.
That's dope. Listen, man, this has been a dope conversation with Matthew. Man, listen, I want to say I appreciate you. I really respect you. I love what you do. I can't wait for us to ideate some more. That's my new 2021 favorite word. But I don't even want to just ideate. I want to do stuff. I want to get stuff done because I think, I want to make some cool stuff with you and with other creatives like you. How can where can we follow you at? I mean, I know that you're not necessarily always on social, but what's your website? Right. What's your social? Like, how can we support you on that capacity?
Cool. So maticrealm.com is my website. I guess you have show notes somewhere they can reach these at. But maticrealm.com is my site. And through that tag, you can find everything. I have my Instagram linked. I think I have a Facebook page linked still. Twitter, everywhere. It's just Manic Realm as the root. And you can find me anywhere online with that.
Dope. This is awesome. Well, listen, thank you again, Matthew, for joining me for another episode of Creative to Creative. And for those that are listening to the podcast, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for supporting. If you'd like to listen to the full version of the podcast or get more information about becoming a guest, definitely hit me up on social at Tristan Barracks for all my social platforms. And if you're watching this on YouTube, big up yourself. Listen, thank you so much for watching this on our YouTube channel. We want you to like, subscribe, share, and comment below if you have any questions, and we'll make the connection with the different guests that we have on the show. Until the next time, to my podcasting audience. Oh, did you want to say something, Matthew?
Make sure y'all hit the notification bell as well so you get notifications when new posts come out.
That's what I'm talking about. You see what I'm saying? See, we always got to have people around us to elevate. That's what I'm saying. Matthew's here to elevate. You got to make sure that you hit that bell button because you got to know when the videos are coming out. But for those that are listening and watching, thank you again. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Stay creative, stay blessed, and stay safe. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Creative to Creative podcast with Tristan Barracks. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. If you would like to be a guest, please email us at info@tristanbarracks.com. Peace.